This is Tim from HighGraph, and in this video you will get a few hot takes and spicy opinions on my part because I feel like it's time. We need to talk about all the buzzwords. MACH, Composable, DXP, DXC, DXO, Federation, the list goes on. And of course there's a place for these buzzwords. They help us define certain things, but they also confuse. So what I want to do in this video is go over a few of the most important buzzwords and give you my opinion on them. Of course, feel free to comment down below because I'm sure you don't agree on everything. And then afterwards, we undress the thing. What do you really need to make your architecture work? And then based on your company's maturity, technical skill and special needs, you can start to choose some of the other things. But most likely you won't need them. So stick around to somewhere in the middle of this video where I actually talk about the basics so you can see what you need. Let's talk about MACH, which first of all is the coolest acronym because Mach 1 and 2 and 3 is speed for airplanes and fun stuff like that. But also MACH stands for microservices based, API first, cloud native and headless. And so MACH is not actually a technology, it's not a product, it's not software, it's actually just a collection of best practices to be able to create highly flexible, super fast, scalable, future-proof software. So best practices to create software. That's it. Next on the list is Composable. Composable architecture refers to a modular approach of reusable components that brands choose. So you choose exactly what you need over choosing an off-the-shelf big product that has everything. And we like to call that a monolith. Yet another buzzword. And so the cool thing about using a composable architecture is that you choose exactly what you need. And if the market changes, you just change one part of your architecture and you're good to go. Because if you have an off-the-shelf product and something changes and you need to adapt fast, you either have customization or an upgrade path that both are time-consuming and expensive, or in the worst case, you might have to rebuild your whole architecture, which is way worse. And so generally, composable architectures focus on the A inside MACH, so API first. Let's talk about DXP. DXP or digital experience platforms are generally a collection of features and technologies and services that allow semi-technical or non-technical users to do lots of stuff with drag and drop and visual editing to basically control their whole digital experience. I love that word experience, right? Because what is experience? It's just their website generally. And so they can do personalization, make landing pages, do changes to product data, a lot of things all in one. And generally these are monolithic pieces of software, which means, yes, it's another fancy word, it's just an off-the-shelf product with all these services built in by one vendor. So a good example is Adobe AEM or Sitecore. Next up is DXC, Digital Experience Composition, which essentially has the same goal as the DXP, the Digital Experience Platform, but the main difference is the tech. It's much more modern, it's much more modular, and especially it's agnostic to whatever stuff you plug into it. So it's a very light platform that you as a brand can choose which specialty sources that you need, from CMS to personalization to images, whatever, you plug it in, and then content editors that are not super technical can still do all the things that you were able to do in a DXP. So it's essentially a modern version that's agnostic to the tools that you choose, which makes it fit in this whole composable architecture story that we just talked about before. Last but not least, let's talk about DXO, Digital Experience Orchestration. And so this is not DXC and it's not DXP. And the main difference is that they scope down what they do. So DXP and DXC have opinions on how you do the implementation of their tool in your front end, right? They have SDKs, so software development kits that developers use to talk to the system. DXO has no such thing. It's just the data orchestration bit that you would do in your DXC and DXP for content editors, but then nothing for developers. And so this doesn't make them less good, it's just a different scope that they chose, and for these folks it's actually a feature, because there's no opinionated piece of software in the front end that you have to use to connect to it. Anybody can use it no matter what, and they choose on their own how to do that. So that's, as a company, less scope to deal with, which is pretty cool. So it's yet another flavor of the same thing. Now that that is out of the way, feel free to put down some comments, because I'm sure I didn't hit up all the nuances, because then this video would be like half an hour. All right, let's go into what you really need as the basis for your architecture before we then jump into all of the buzzwords. With a market changing so fast nowadays, people tend to put their domain content, so the content that they use specifically that defines their product or their company or brand, in specialty tools, all small ones, because these specialty tools, we like to call them best of breed. That's yet another lovely term. It's essentially a company with a smaller scope that specializes in that scope only. So a perfect example is like Algolia for search. They are by far the best search engine and result ordering and re-ranking and personalization tool out there. So that's of course where you put your search. Off-the-shelf products that offer everything can never be that specialized. So your base nowadays is you put all your stuff in specialty buckets, and then somehow all that stuff from these specialty buckets, all your domain content, needs to get into one place, so you can somehow unify it and connect it all up to be able to then actually build a website or an app or something like that. And so you somehow need to federate the content that comes in and make a unified view. And that unified view can then be used by implementations. Like a front end, like a website, or like a refrigerator application, something like that. And so you have to be able to federate this data while keeping the sources where that data comes from super flexible, autonomous and secure. So you keep it literally securely away, because your implementation on the front end never talks to it. It actually talks to your federation layer. And so once all your data is in, that federation layer makes it super transparent and standardized. There's only one way to query it. And then there are some systems that are really good at, if your data is super messy, you will then maybe use that system to fix that up a little, and that's where a DXO comes in, for example. But most of the time you don't need that at all. So you just need a system where you grab the specialty data, you put it into one place, and then there's a really easy, transparent way to then query it. And then afterwards you might need a CMS, and then you're done. But now you have to look at your maturity level, your technical skill, your special needs. You might need a visual editor for your content, or you might need specific personalization, or you might have a certain data analytics driver that you specifically need. And this is where those more buzzword type things come in. So you might potentially want a DXO if your data is super messy and you have to do some real-time transformations of all this data to orchestrate it before it goes into your CMS and to your front end. Or you might want a DXC if you need all this drag and drop stuff, because you change stuff every day. And so you need to figure out, what do I need as a company? What are my special needs? What are my technical abilities to understand all these things? And then you choose. But for 90% out there of you probably just need get some data into a federated system and then use a headless CMS, query it and build your front end. Done, dusted. Basically everybody in the mid-market and lower up of the enterprise market just needs a solid CMS with workflows that also then talks to this federation, and then all the specialty sources come into it. And so these buzzwords kind of mean nothing unless you know what problems you have to solve and understand your basics. And your basics are, you have to have a federation platform that keeps your sources autonomous, so you can actually have teams working on these special sources. And then you have to have a front end that is very easy to query as a unified view. And that's your core, that's your base, and that is HighGraph. HighGraph is literally a really solid headless CMS with federation features inside it for most use cases. And from there you can grow it as much as you want, but that's not for this video. So you now know what base you need. You need federation, and then you probably need a CMS, and you're good to go. Anyways, that's it for today. Cheers.